Hi everyone, Lynn here, and today I'm going to show you how I made the booklet insert for my Vermont mini album. As you can see, this one here is actually made with chipboard. I have, I believe, a better way to do this, so I'm going to show you how to do that so that you can insert any kind of booklet into any kind of album. And I am going to do this in two parts just because it's a little bit different if you're wanting to do a booklet insert into a hidden hinge type of album. So we're going to do this kind today. This will work for obviously this kind of binding. It will also work for your regular ring or D ring, and this one's a little bit messed up here, mini albums. And it will work for your regular scrapbook albums, all right? And actually the insert I'm making is going into this album. Okay, so in order to be able to have a booklet insert like this as a standalone piece, no matter what kind of album you're adding it into, you actually need to cut a slot. And let me put this in here so you can see. All right, this is the one with the chipboard, and it works the same for paper. Basically, you have two options. You can either use an X-Acto knife and keep scoring until you got one line cut through, and then move over, you know, 1/8 of an inch or so, and then cut through that as well, and then you got to notch your edges. This is the EK Success Vertical Slot Punch. This is one of my new favorite tools. You can use this punch for a number of things, but one of the original reason why I purchased this punch was specifically so I could have even notches throughout a layout in order to be able to weave ribbon through the notches. But I never did use it for that, and it just kind of occurred to me one day that this would actually punch just the perfect width to make the slot in order to be able to add in my booklet. And the wonderful thing about it is that once you put your booklet in there, like so, let me move this out. All right, it is a standalone piece. It's not glued to anything. It's not stuck in a pocket where you have to take it out. And you can look through every single page, you know, and once you get to this side of it, obviously it's going to flip over. But it's a standalone piece. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our paper. And today I'm actually working with pattern paper. This is Echo Park Dots and Stripes. And I'm going to cut it to the full width at 3 inches, okay? And 3 inches is a good size to start with if you're really not sure exactly how wide you want your piece to be. Now remember, this is not for a hidden hinge album. This is specifically for any kind of album that works with rings or like the cinch type binding system. All right, so I've cut my piece of paper at 3 inches, and I want to go ahead and score it in half. So obviously I'm going to be scoring it at 1.5. All right. And I'm going to take out the good bone folder to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half. And I am going to work on the full length piece. All right, and the reason that I'm doing that is just because it gives you a nicer, cleaner edge if you cut it after the fact and not ahead of time. Now, for this punch to work, you need a minimum of a 1/2 inch, all right? A minimum of a 1/2 inch, because once you start punching, you're going to be awfully close to the 1/2 inch edge. So really, 3/4 inch would be better for the width of your punching area. And then whatever is left is going to be where you bind. So you can make this as narrow or as wide as you want, but I wouldn't go too narrow. Just remember, you can always trim it down, but you can't add the paper back onto it. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to use score tape today, just because it's fast and it really does hold the binding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my score tape right along the edge, but not on the fold line. All right. And I'm going to do that on both sides of the fold. Now that may not make a lot of sense right now, but it will in just a minute. All right, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm a little crooked, but that's okay. Now that I've done that, I want to go ahead and leave some space in between this piece of score tape and the next piece. And I'm looking for roughly a 1/4 inch to leave in there for space, because I don't want to be punching through tape. All right, that'll just make your punch sticky, and that's not a good thing. It, you know, causes all kinds of problems. So I'm going to go ahead and add a piece. Remember, it's 1/4 inch away from the first one, so technically a 1/2 inch in. All right, and I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. A 1/2 inch in, whoops. A 1/2 inch in, roughly. All right, it's not perfect, and I'm not worried about it. And then I'm going to go ahead, and I'm out of tape on that one. I'm going to go ahead and put one on the edge on both sides. And then I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right. I'll show it to you close up. Now you're probably wondering why I'm adding all this tape. Well, the reason that I'm adding all this tape is because I'm going to sandwich a piece of tyvek in between. This is tyvek. It's actually a building material, but this is from an envelope from the office supply store. Okay, I just cut them apart and I use them as is. All right, it actually gives you strength. I don't know if you're a fan of Kathy Orta's videos and her mini albums, then you know what tyvek is. I don't really need to explain it to you, but if you don't know what tyvek is, let me show you. You cannot tear this stuff. Okay, it might get wonky, but it will not tear. You have to cut it. That's the only way that you're going to take a chunk out of it. All right, so I'm going to use that as my sandwich, as my filler. All right, so you can see here, I'm going to fold it back on itself so you can see this is what one side looks like. I'm going to go ahead and add my tyvek in between. Remember, in here, you don't want any tape. Okay, hope that makes sense. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut my piece of tyvek. And since I know this is 1.5 inches, I'm going to cut it just a little bit narrower because I don't really want it sticking out on the side. This is just an extra piece that I had, and I'm going to use it up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hopefully I won't mess this up. All right, I have a tendency of doing that. All right, so now I know my tyvek is not quite long enough, but remember, we're going to cut it, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead, and because I know myself, I'm not going to pull the whole tape off because I have a tendency to glue things down crooked when I do that. All right, so I'm just going to remove the tape on the one side. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try my best, and I have to stand up to do this because I'm too far away from the camera. I'm going to go ahead and line up my tyvek, making sure it's on this side of the fold line. Okay, and you can see I cut it a little bit shorter and it's real close to that edge. Alright, so I have my tyvek in on that side, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape from the other side and sandwich the tyvek in there. This is what I end up with. Now this is a very strong piece. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and measure our booklet. And we need to know the height of our booklet. And this one is 8.5 inches tall. Now I need to add some wiggle room. So once I do my punching, if I were to do my punching at 8.5 inches tall, it would be too tight to, first of all, insert my booklet, and second of all, it would wind up tearing my pages because there's no wiggle room. So I'm going to give it 1/4 of an inch for wiggle room. Okay, so that now brings us to 8.25. On top of that, I want at least 1/4 of an inch on each end. Now you can go more than that if you like. I'm going to go ahead and just add an extra 1/4 inch to each end. So that now brings us to 9.25 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this at 9.25 inches tall. And since I know that I don't have tyvek right on the end, I'm going to go ahead and cut that end off and then measure 9.25. And now I'm sure that I have tyvek in between. Okay? So the next step that you're going to do is you need to measure. Now you know that you've given yourself 1/4 of an inch on each end plus some wiggle room. But I'm going to start a little bit smaller. I can always punch it a little bit more. Alright? And you'll see what I mean once I get going. So I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm going to go approximately, let's go right to the corner here, and I hope you can see that. I'm going to go 3/8 of an inch that way and 3/8 of an inch that way. And I am seriously eyeballing it. Alright? So I'm going to go right about there, and I'm just going to make a dot. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And that's going to be my starting point for punching. If I need to punch it again, I will. If I need to add a little bit more room. But that way I know that I don't want to go past either one of those dots to do my punching. Okay? So then we're going to go ahead and start with the punch, and I'm going to insert my punch so that that edge of it is just past my mark. Alright? And I hope that you can see that, my mark. Right? Just past it. And pushing my punch in as far as I can get it that way, I'm going to go ahead and punch. And I'm going to keep pushing that way. Remember, this is your folded edge. I'm going to keep pushing my punch that way. And I'm going to slightly overlap. And I'll show you why. Alright, if I didn't overlap, alright, can you see the little notches that you're left with? Right here? Alright, that's what happens if you don't overlap, because your edges, the edges of the punch are rounded. So in order to eliminate that, you need to overlap a little bit. Alright, so now just so I don't mess myself up, I'm going to come back to this side and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find my mark and I'm going to push my punch in as far as it'll go, and you can see my mark was a little off, but that's okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to punch. So I'm going to go ahead and punch this all the way across, pushing my punch in as far as it will go, and making sure that it's straight, overlapping as I go. So I'll finish this and I will be right back. I wanted to show you this. Alright, can you see the little tiny bits here hanging off? I have 3 of them. That's not that bad. That is not my cardstock or pattern paper. That is the tyvek inside. And the reason that I have that is because I didn't overlap my punch enough. So instead of punching properly, what it did is it yanked on the paper as it was punching part of it. If this happens to you, that's why. Okay, so I'm just going to use my fussy cutting scissors. And since I'm a left-handed scissor holder, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and just trim that tyvek off. Now, is it a perfect edge? Like as if it was cut with, you know, a fancy trimmer. No, it's not. But you know what? This is not going to show in your album. I have the same thing in this one here, even on the chipboard. And this here, I hope you can see it right there. You can see it right there. Okay, that's pretty close. If you want to use chipboard, go ahead and do that. But if you're looking to have something that's going to be a little bit stronger, all right, I am pulling on this. All right, this is going to hold your booklet, and it's not going to tear at the corners, which is invariably where it would tear. All right, so now let's see if this is going to fit in there, and if not, we will need to adjust. And it does. I punched it properly. All right, and there is my booklet insert. And I do at this end, all right, you can see I can move it up and down. I should back off the camera. All right, and so now this side becomes the edge where I'm going to bind. So I can punch my holes with the cinch or whatever other binding machine you have, or with a crocodile, however you're going to insert this into your album. And that's how that works. That's as easy as that. All right, so that's how you do that. Now, if you hadn't punched it quite tall enough, then go ahead and just take a little tiny bit off each end so that your piece is centered. And now you can go ahead and do your binding. Now I did tell you that I was gonna do a separate video for the hidden hinge type of album, and I'm going to do that next. If I haven't made things clear enough for you, then go ahead and leave those down below too. And that's all I have for you for right now. So stay tuned, and I will post the second video right after this one. Thank you for watching. Bye.